What's up everybody, Teldo here, and today I want to talk about the new Battlerites for Croak. I haven't really talked about any guides for Croak in ages, and it's about time that I updated some of this. So there's this new Battlerite system where you can pick 5 Battlerites from the very get-go, and you have way less limitations because there's no round/tier based system anymore. Before you always only had 3 choices every round, they were always the same, and stuff like Noxious Reaction, which gave you a root, you could never really take it because it was on the same tier like Spit, and you really needed that back in the day. So you just had way less options before, but now you can be really creative with it. And I want to say it's really important once you get the hang of it, once you get the basics of your champion down, that you try to think for yourself which Battlerites you want to pick in which situation. You can really adjust to the playstyle of your opponent, and you can also mix and match the Battlerites to your own playstyle and just get so much more out of your champion if you try to really look into it and think for yourself. I am going to share a cookie cutter build later as well. For those of you who are new to the champion and just want to get something basic that you can use in most situations and do alright with it. But now we're going to talk about every Battlerite individually, and I'm going to tell you when it's really good and when you might not need it as much. So start off with Severe Toxin. It's just a very good overall Battlerite. It doubles the healing over time on your Toxin Muck and your general toxins as well. That also goes for your Toxin Blades when you hit someone with that. And it's just really useful for your sustain, gives a lot of survivability, and the movement speed reduction on it is nice to have as well. It can help you catch up to people when they're slowed, when they're affected by it, and then maybe you can catch them just barely with your camouflage, which you would otherwise not be able to do. So most of the time, I think it's really good to pick this, and you can't really do much wrong with it. Then Spit allows you to cast 2 Toxin Mucks. You get 2 stacks for it. But you can't like recast it every time twice. It basically just, as you can see here, I get 1 charge back over time, and then it starts recharging the second stack. It's really good, and it used to be pretty much a must-have, but they nerfed it and gave it +1 second cooldown if you go for this battle right now, so it's not always optimal. And I personally don't take it as much anymore, but I think for beginners it's absolutely amazing because you don't really have the right cooldown management quite yet with your Croak, and having 2 of those charges ready when you need them can be really useful. And you only really get the benefit from it when you have your cooldown ready and when it like starts charging after 1 second when your cooldown was ready, if that makes sense. I personally just use it most of the time on cooldown because I just have the flow for it, and I've been playing Croak for so long, so I don't really use it as often anymore. But as I said, for beginners, this is great. Then we have Lethal Toxins. I'm not the biggest fan of this. I don't think it offers too much. It gives you 6 bonus damage when you hit your toxin, which sounds really great in theory, but in reality you don't really get as much out of it. You see, it's a good amount of damage, right? But it's very slow damage, people can dispel it, and you don't really get that much out of it. Most of the time you try to burst your enemies and get their max HP down so they can't heal it back up again with their healer or their self-sustain abilities, and this one doesn't really help as much with that, but in some situations I like it a lot when I play against triple DPS, for example, or double DPS, whatever, when they don't have a lot of sustain on their team, and you basically just try to wear them down over time, and the Lethal Toxins can help a ton with that. Then we got Twin Strikes. I always thought this was pretty much a must pick because it gives you so much damage. After you jump, your next 2 attacks, excuse me, your next 2 attacks deal 3 bonus damage, which is a lot of damage. But personally, I don't use it as often anymore because sometimes it's very risky to stay in for even 2 attacks, because on high level people will punish you when you jump in, like pretty much immediately. They will try to throw any CC at you or any burst ability, and it's very hard to justify those 2 auto attacks in a lot of situations. Of course, you can still get a lot of value out of it at times, but I feel like there's better choices in a lot of situations. So I would recommend this to newer players again, because Well, on lower ratings you can get away with a lot of more left clicks and the damage really stacks up over time with this. But I still take it sometimes in higher level matches as well, when I feel like I have the possibility to just get those M1s in, and I don't get punished as much for jumping in. Then we got Frog Strike, which gives you a stun when you jump out of your camouflage, and it's a cool ability. I like what they're trying to do with this, but you use 2 of your cooldowns for this, 2 of your really big cooldowns that are very important, and you don't really want to stack your cooldown usages like this very often. And when you do hit it, it doesn't really do that much. It's a good amount of burst, but it's not enough to really justify it, because it's super easy to miss, like just by people moving around and sidestepping it. But also, when you jump out of your stealth, it's very reactable. You can see it early enough that enemies can just use a counter for it or use an escape, and I don't really recommend using it. I've been trying to use it in a tournament, could not really make use of it. I don't know. Not the biggest fan of this. I love the design idea of it though, and maybe with some adjustments it could be useful. Then Jungle Toad, I think, is incredibly powerful. I have tried not using it for quite some time, but the 14 sustain that you get from jumping on a target is just too good. It gives you so much health and it allows you to just play a lot more aggressively if you hit your spaces, and I recommend using that pretty much at all times. It's just way too good. I would only say don't use it if you feel like you won't get focused at all in the match and you just need as much offensive power as possible. But otherwise, just use it. It's very, very good. Then Precision Leap is one of the new Battlerites. It increases the max distance you can jump, and it lowers the minimum distance, so the dead zone, when you jump on people. And that talent is really good against melees, because the minimum distance that you can jump helps a lot with just dealing damage to melees. You don't really, like, let's say this is a Freya or whatever, or a Shifu, and you're trying to trade with them, and you run out of auto attack charges, you start attacking really slowly, and if you don't have your stealth ready to reset it, you have to use your spacebar to do it, right? But if you don't have this talent, you have to jump pretty far away to get the reset, and enemies can like just walk away from you again, or they can like punish you right after landing. And with Precision Leap, you have way more of a chance to like back off a tiny bit and try to get the jump on them to deal a little bit more damage. It's still tricky to do, but it can be incredibly useful at times. And there's some really nice synergy with Noxious Reaction, which is the root talent on your E, which allows you to just dash through them and then immediately jump on them for a really nice combo that a lot of people don't really expect. And if you don't have Precision Leap, it's a lot harder to do. If I try to do it with the same distance, you can see, okay, I got it here, but a lot of times when I'm like a little further away and I try to dash through them and then jump, it doesn't really quite work. Kind of like this. You see, I miss it here, but with Precision Leap I would have hit it, and it's just a lot of extra damage. It's 20 damage and 14 healing from Jungle Toad. So I love running those two together most of the time against a bunch of melees, but even against ranged champions, the extra distance can help a lot too. Then we got Venom Strike on our Q, which gives you 10 extra damage whenever you stun somebody, and that is just really, really powerful. In the old Battlerite system, you never really picked it because it just didn't do a whole lot. You had to choose between this or Spit 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 or the root, and this one just didn't offer enough in comparison to the other Battlerites back in the day with how the old system worked. And now I basically always take it, especially because I don't take Twin Strikes as often anymore, and you need a little bit of extra damage. And getting those openers just gives you a whole lot more damage with the explosion in the end, especially if you sometimes get lucky and get the AoE hit with it. So I pretty much always take this one as well. Then the stealth duration, cut to the chase, is very useful in 3v3 especially, or when you feel like you play against a team that makes it very difficult for you to get your stealth openers, because after the initial speed boost you move at normal movement speed and people can just walk away from you when they see the stealth indicator over their head, and it makes it difficult to catch people at times. But with this talent, you can wait out more cooldowns, you can wait out counters, you can just try to stay close to enemies, make them scared that they maybe use some cooldowns, and then at the very end you can still open up on them. It's really powerful in 3v3 especially, because people will try to punish you hard for going in, even when you're stealthed, because they have a basic idea of where you're at, and the better the player is, the easier it gets to punish you for that, especially like Ashkas with their right click that just has so much zone coverage when they spam out those fireballs. And if you get hit by that, you get punished really hard, and the stealth duration just allows you to do more and like go maybe a safer route. You can maybe try to flank around and go in a more unpredictable pattern, and still in the very end you might be able to get off your attack. So this is a talent that I used to almost never take before, but now it's really useful, and I take it in most 3v3 situations. Then we already talked about the root briefly with the combination when you go for Precision Leap, but in general the root is very good against melees, because melees just get well punished if you root them. They can't really do as much when they're rooted, and again, you can do this little combo here to punish them really well, which is a lot harder to do otherwise. You can't like jump on them very easily. Also, if you fight against multiple enemies, you can like dash through them and then follow up with your right click and get a bunch of sustain this way. They won't be able to avoid it unless they use a cooldown for it. And in general, I think it's a really strong ability that I use, especially when enemies are stacking up a lot, and that again happens with melees. If they have 2 melees on their team, or even 3 melees, they will most of the time, when they try to focus the same target, be very close to each other, and you can peel well for your team by dashing through them and then throwing your right click on them or jumping on them or whatever. Then we have Trickery, and this talent is incredibly useful if you, again, play against a bunch of melees. I think the dash talent in general, the dash talents are very good against melees. Because, well, if they're stacked up, if you feel like the enemy team stacks up even on non-melee teams, it gives you a lot of... That was really weird. It gives you a lot of cooldown reduction on your stealth. So let's say I open up on this guy, and then I dash through 3 targets. You can see my stealth is already ready again, which is just incredibly powerful. Of course, this is pretty much a perfect scenario where you can hit 3 enemies with it, but again, against some melees, it can be really good. And also, it is very powerful against Blossom, because she has this Tree of Life, and it counts as a target as well. And every time when she uses it, you can just dash through her and the tree and get 2 targets hit with it, which gives you 3 seconds cooldown reduction on your stealth and gives you a lot more pressure. Also, something to keep in mind, when you do use that talent and you get the cooldown reduction, people cannot deal with it when you just stealth really fast again. They just do not expect it, and then you can go for a very aggressive stun on your camouflage again, and most of the time people won't be able to react to it even if they have a cooldown ready. So definitely something to keep in mind. Then we have Frog Slice, which is again a very interesting talent, but I think it just is not useful enough, because again, if you use it out of your stealth, you get a bonus out of it, and it gives you a longer dash distance, and it applies a 50% weaken for 2.5 seconds. But to be honest, it doesn't do enough. You use 2 cooldowns again for it, and you don't ever want to stack your cooldowns like this. If you use it out of your stealth, your stealth doesn't start your cooldown until you dash, until you break it. And if you dash out of it, both of those cooldowns are on max cooldown for that time, and you only have your space to rely on for defensive capabilities, and you want to use that more offensively most of the time. So I pretty much never take this, actually. I think this is the worst talent that Croak has. Yeah, actually, it is hands down the worst talent. Probably even worse than Frog Strike. I don't recommend using this, only if you just want to have a little bit of fun with it. But if you do use it, make sure that you use it together with Noxious Reaction as well. Because if you do use your dash out of stealth, at least you should have a root on it as well, or something like that. Then we got Frog Frenzy, and A lot of people love Frog Frenzy. I personally don't like it as much. It gives you a reset on your auto attacks. So if you attack 4 times, you see you attack very slowly, you move more slowly as well, your DPS goes to complete shit. Normally you have to use your stealth or your spacebar to reset it, but if with that talent you can just press R and you get 6 stacks back at it again, and it gives you 1 bonus damage on it as well. So Toxin Blaze itself gives you 2 bonus damage, and this gives you another bonus damage, making you deal 11 damage per hit, which is really powerful if you can make use of it. But most of the time when you're in the fight, as I mentioned earlier on higher rating, you can't really sit there and just auto attack people. It is awesome if you can make use of it and you get ridiculous DPS out of it, but enemies have an easy time just getting away from you. They can sometimes just walk away from you. A Freya can just throw a hammer in your face and knock you back. All sorts of things can happen that prevent you from just attacking them in the face like this. There's a few champions where it can be really useful though. For example, I think it can be really good against Thorn, it can be really good against Varish, and it can be pretty good against Lucy or other healers as well. But again, it's more difficult to pull it off against healers because Lucy might be able to just panic you away. Or one of her teammates will try to peel, and I feel like the 6 bonus attacks that you get from this are just not really that useful most of the time. I would rather just go into stealth, activate my R then, and then just attack out of stealth, and the 2 bonus attacks are nice in that situation as well, but they don't really do quite enough. And finally, we got the Battlerite for our ultimate. It's called Momentum, and it gives you a movement speed boost after using your ultimate. If you can make use of it, if you do get your ultimates very quickly, and if you play against a team that is susceptible versus ultimates from you, like maybe a Pearl, maybe a Varish player, Thorn, those champions are all fairly weak to your ultimate, and it's really useful to just spam your ultimate as soon as you have it against them. It can be really useful then, because you can just ult through people, and then you get this crazy movement speed boost afterwards, and you can make use of it together with your camouflage and just cover a lot of distance during that time, allowing you to go for really big plays when you have it ready. But in a lot of situations you just can't make use of it because you don't get your ultimate quickly enough, or it just doesn't do enough to really justify it in a lot of situations. I think it can be really useful if you feel like the enemy team plays very defensively and you need this big burst of power to really wear them down. But most of the time I don't really pick it. I feel like there's just better Battlerites that just give you a bonus all the time, or a lot more than just using your ultimate. But the 40% movement speed is good enough to justify picking this at some points. So yeah, that's basically it for the overview of every Battlerite itself. But as I promised, I will give you a cookie cutter build that works in most situations. And for that, I would take Severe Toxin. Most of the time gives you good sustain. The Spit gives you the ability to, if you miss your Toxin Muck, you can always cast a second one. It helps a lot with sustain, and if you don't manage your cooldowns, you get a lot of value out of this. So this is great for beginners. Then Jungle Toad, it's pretty much a core talent that I almost always take, as I mentioned earlier. It's also great for beginners. And your Twin Strikes gives you tons of value, especially because you can just auto attack a lot more on lower ratings. 3 extra damage per hit stacks up quite nicely. I prefer that over Precision Leap. Precision Leap is just only really good for hit and run tactics that you will have to make use of more later on. And we got Venom Strike because it just gives you overall really good value. I think those are great talents. You can consider going for Frog Frenzy because, again, more auto attacks gives you a lot more value and lower rating. You could get rid of your Venom Strike here, or you could get rid of your Spit to do this, depending on what you want to give up, if you want to give up a little bit of damage or a little bit of sustain. And also a thing that you should consider if you play in 3v3 and you feel like you can't really get good openers, you could try and test around your camouflage duration. And those in general are pretty good builds that you can test around with early on. I personally go for something like this most of the time. I love taking those talents together, and then the last talent I switch around a lot. I either go for Root against a lot of melees, I go for Trickery against Blossom, and sometimes if I play 3-3, I go for something like this. And if I feel like I don't really, if I feel like the enemies have a lot of melees again, and I get a lot of value out of my root or trickery, I get rid of Severe Toxin to get one of those 2 talents. So yeah, you can switch around a lot, and you can fix things for your playstyle, and I really love it. It gives you just the option to be more creative and just actually make decisions in the beginning. You didn't really do that with the old Battlerite system at all. I always went for the same build there, and it got boring after a while. And yeah, I really hope this video was useful for you guys, and yeah, I'm probably gonna do something similar for Thorn soon as well. If you guys like this, let me know, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!